Hi class, and welcome to the first video of the series for COP4710 Database Systems. I'm your instructor, Patrick Brooks. Now today we're going to be on chapter 3 of the ER diagram, beyond the first entity diagram. So what you should probably do is have your book handy to refer back to. You can always pause this recording and then restart it. You might also want to print these slides out so that you can make notes, whatever, refer to them as needed. Remember, you have the pause button. You can restart the recording at any time, or you can go back if you like. So just feel free to skip around as needed. Okay, so I guess we'll go ahead and start the slideshow here. All right, so beyond the first entity diagram, so what we're doing is we're expanding a little bit upon the basic knowledge that we've already obtained over the last 2 weeks about ER diagrams. So our topics, we have 4 main topics here. We have examining the entity, what is an entity, what is it composed of, defining a relationship. Of course, a relationship is how 2 entities are related. Preliminary grammar, this helps us in our descriptions of the entities and of data. And defining a second entity, so expanding beyond that first entity, because the database by itself with just one entity really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we will go ahead and see about expanding upon this to create databases with a lot more practical applications. We have our nice little car sound effects there. All right, so entities are things we store data about, okay? An entity is a thing. It can be tangible. It can be intangible. What does that sound an awful lot like? Anything. It can be used to represent any kind of object, tangible or intangible, which does things and has properties. Well, object, right? If we look at it from an object-oriented paradigm, an entity is pretty much the same thing, right? At least conceptually. Sure, there are a lot of differences, but conceptually, you can relate entity to object. And then above that, you see attributes are data stored. Well, okay, that's good, but that also kind of rings a bell, right? Well, attributes are data about an entity, so that would be data fields, right? So that would be your properties of your object. Okay, so if you want to kind of think of it from an OOP paradigm, there you go, right there. I know most of us have, hopefully all of us have had at least one programming class anyways at this point. Okay, so remember, an attribute is just an attribute, and that's all it is. If you need to record more than one piece of information about an attribute, it is no longer an attribute. An attribute is a piece of information. If you need to store anything beyond that, that attribute needs to become an entity. And we'll see an example following up here in just a sec. There we go. All right, so let's say we have a database of employees, okay? You have an attribute, let's say we have Social Security number, name, address, and then we have an attribute called department, okay? Well, that's fine and dandy. Department, if you just have an attribute called, say, department name, that won't be a problem. But let's say in discussions with the customer, we decide that, there we go, we need more information. Let's say we need to use department location, we need, we need to keep that department name, we need manager's name, etc. Well, then we're no longer dealing with an attribute, right? If we need to record more than one piece of information, it's not going to be done in one single attribute. So the fact that we need to store information about that department makes it an entity. There we go. So what do? We break it out. We create a new entity called department. Okay. Here we have an example. That's what our department entity would look like if we needed to store those things about it. And actually, this technically isn't this isn't correct. We have a little omission here. If you look, there's something missing, and it's the primary key. Primary key should probably be something like title on the department. You need to have a unique key, something to distinguish this department entity so that you don't have anomalies in your database, which we'll also discuss further. But that's the only thing that's missing. You know, it probably should have an underline under that title. Okay, so now we define the relationship of the new entity back to the old. Okay, remember, department was a part of employee. It is related to employee. So we need to create a relationship between those two entities as a way to link them. We do this for several reasons. We will get into this a little bit later, but know that from an ER standpoint, when entities are related, you will need to link them via relationships. A relationship is a connection between two or more entities, and it's normally denoted by a verb or a verb phrase. Nouns won't really cut it with relationships. It needs to be a verb. You know, a good relationship verb would be drives. You know, let's say person drives car. Person works, or well, yeah, either person works at business or business employs people. Probably works would be a good verb there. Now, you don't always have a verb as your relationship. There are some special cases where if the relationship is not very clear, it can't clearly be identified by a verb. You just go ahead and use the first letter of each of the attributes together. So, like, let's say, what did I say? Person, car would be PC, for example. Of course, we have a good verb drives to describe that relationship, so it's not a problem. But let's say we didn't have a verb, or the relationship wasn't very clear, couldn't be clearly expressed by a verb. You would use the first letter of both attributes together instead of a verb. And we'll go over that in just a second. We'll reiterate this. And remember, in the Chen-like ER diagrams, the relationships are shown by a diagram. Okay, so here we go. We have our employee. If you look at the bottom, we have our original employee entity. He's got a name. We'll store a name. He's got an address. He's got a social security number. Notice that social security number is the key there. Remember, a primary key is something that uniquely identifies an entry. There's only one social security number per person, supposedly. I'm sure there are mix-ups. Nothing's perfect. But, you know, there's supposedly only one social security number per person in the U.S. So social security number is an excellent key. There we go. So we broke the department. You know, let's say you see this very top line here that doesn't have anything connected to it. Let's pretend that it had an attribute called department, or department name, something like that. Then we decided that we needed to store the name, or title, if you will, the location, and the manager. Well, okay, then we break it off. You know, we take that attribute, turn it into a box, you know, make it an entity, and then put the attributes on it that we need. So we need to store location, title, and manager of each department. You know, that cannot be an attribute. It has to be an entity. Then what's our last step? We have, I guess, the three major steps, if you will. Okay. First, to break it off, make it an entity. Second, you put the data you need on it. Okay. And number three, put our relationship in there, right? So in this case, we have an employee works in a department. And you can say it in the reverse. You can say something like, even though it may sound cumbersome, you can say a department is worked in by employees, or yeah, basically you want to say it forward in the active voice and backward in the passive voice. So, you know, employee works in a department is worked in by employees. Okay, that's how we want to describe the grammar. And there are good reasons for doing this, and I'll explain in just a second. There we go. Employee may work in a department. The department has employees working for it. So in other words, you see the may there. An employee may or may not work in a particular department. Apparently, we have employees that don't work in any specified department. And a department has employees working for it. So you also see in the second one, you see the plurality. You see a department has employees working for it. So a department has at least one, probably more, employees working for it. There's no may there, so it does. The department has to have at least one. Okay? All right. the degree of the relation depends on the number of entities involved. So this is what we call an n-ary relationship. N being any integer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this case, we have a binary relationship. So that's 2. There are only 2 entities involved here in this relationship. Now, if we go back, let's go back just a second. So I wanted to clear something up that may not be entirely clear. You might say, well, wait a sec. We can have 100 employees working for a department. That's a 101-ary relationship, right? Well, no, it's still a binary relationship. Just keep in mind, look at it from this perspective. You have 2 entities there. That's all you have. You have employee, you have department. It doesn't matter how many instances of employee you have. It's still considered a binary relationship because there are 2 entities. Okay, back to grammar. Forward, backwards. Employee works in a department, and the department is worked in by employees. Okay? Like I say, forward in the active, then reverse in the passive. You need to express it both ways. You do this so that you can communicate your thoughts and your interpretation to the end user client. If you don't do this, he doesn't have a good idea about what the heck you're doing. The employee end user does not understand ER diagrams. He does not understand database schemas. He does not understand database tables. He doesn't understand queries. This is your way of communicating with him. As we develop this grammar, through the course of the semester, you should pay attention to it because, well, number one, you'll be tested on it, and it'll be in your homework, but number 2, it's your only way of communicating with the customer, from a technical to a non-technical guy or gal. So plural, singular description can be used at the discretion of the user analyst. Use plural or singular as it fits. It's one, singular, multiple, plural. There we go. An employee works in a department, and a department has an employee working for it. This one is a little bit different from the previous slide. You notice it says an employee works in a department, not may work in a department. So we have mandatory both ways. We have full participation, what we call full participation. So, an employee, singular, works in a department, singular. So an employee can only work in one and only one department, it looks like. And a department has employees working for it. Okay? An employee or a department must have one or more employees working for it, is the way I read that. Okay? And we just continue like so. We'll review the specifications, we'll come up with a strong primary entity. Then we'll look to see if there are any attributes that need to be made other entities, or if it's clear that something else needs to be an entity, and we'll continue on until we complete all of our entities needed for the database schema. Okay? So review requirements to determine if other entities are needed, determine what the relationship is between the primary and the new entity, and remember that new entity can either develop from an attribute, or it can be clear that you'll need that extra entity in there when you start. And determining a relationship that may be helpful to involve the user. Absolutely. Absolutely it is. Again, you'll parrot back to him what you're thinking, and he's the one that understands, or she's the one that understands his or her business process, and they will be able to correct any false assumptions, any mistakes that you make along the way. If a relationship can't be defined, use the first letter of each entity to define the relationship. Like I said, you want to use verbs, definitely not nouns. You want to use verbs, but if you can't, if the relationship is not very clear, use the first letter of each entity. I'll give you an example. Let's say we have veterinarian and pet owner. Well, there's not really a direct relationship, at least at first glance. Let's say veterinarian treats pet or owner owns pet. Well, there you go. You're going kind of through a third entity. There at the surface, there could be charges or services or what have you, relationship between veterinarian and person, and that's fine. But on the surface, when you look at it, your first thought is, okay, a veterinarian treats a pet. Pet is owned by a pet owner. So if you wanted to make a relationship between vet and pet owner, we could say, let's say veterinarian owner, EO. We could put a diamond with EO in it. Okay. Again, because there may not be a verb that accurately describes what's going on there. You could say charges, you could say maybe, probably services would be pretty good, but you get the picture. There you go, passenger and seat. Although I would say passenger takes the seat or passenger sits in the seat, but that's what we put in the PowerPoint, so we'll go with it. Okay, so here we go. This is an example of an attribute that develops into an entity. Another example. So let's say we want to track what equipment each employee uses. Okay. And we'll go ahead and add an equipment attribute to that entity. Okay. But let's say we want to add what serial number, attachment. There you go, manufacturer. And what's the solution? There we go. We'll make the equipment an entity. Let's say we had it as an attribute of employee here. So we will break it out into a term. There you go. And we will put the date on it. Step 2. So step 1, we break it out. Step 2, we put whatever data necessary on it. And step 3, put the relationship in there. There you go. Employee uses equipment. Equipment is used by employees. And notice, again, here at the bottom, our employee has the primary key, a social security number, which is great. More power to them. But at the top, see we have the equipment entity. I argue that serial number should be the primary key. Just a little omission there, but definitely should be the case. So yeah, at times you're not sure about a relationship. You're pretty sure that they both should be in there. You're not sure if they interact or not, or it's not clear that they do interact. Well, then you don't link them. You definitely don't link them if you don't think you need to, or if you're not sure that you need to. A couple things can happen. You see the second bullet. The entities may have an indirect relationship and need to connect to a third entity. An example could be, vet and owner. They have to connect through pet. Although, again, they would probably connect for purposes of charging, billing, etc. So, if you're not sure if they connect, you just keep them separate. All right, so here we go. We have our little steps and substeps. This list is it's very important from a methodology standpoint. You will not be expected to memorize this and do it on the test. Although you could recreate these pretty well because we're going to be doing quite a bit of this. So this will become ingrained into you over the semester. Okay, so we first get our, like I said, our strong primary entity. We put our data on it. Okay, important, don't forget to label the key, your primary key. Okay. Show the data. You're going to show sample data of it. For the homework questions, you're expected to show sample data. Okay. Now, step 2, use structured English. You're going to describe your entity. You are going to describe your attributes. And you're also going to describe the relationships between entities. A little too far. Okay. So then you look at the attributes and say, do I need to store information about any of these attributes? If you do, again, it's not an attribute. That is an entity. You convert it to an entity. Then You put your data on it, and you define your relationship between the new and the old entity. Okay, and we'll go about repeating this process. We'll do this iteratively as needed for any entities on for any attributes on an entity that need to be converted into entities themselves. And so we will do this. We will do this until we've exhausted. Okay, we'll review the specs. We'll create new entities as needed, be it by breaking them out from attributes or whether it's clear that they need to be entities to begin with. And then we'll go back to step 3 iteratively. And of course, that could be your relationship. Okay, that's all we have here for ER Chapter 3. This was a pretty small chapter here. Be sure to view the DIA tutorial for this week because that has some important information on it. DIA is the software that you're going to be using to create these entity relationship diagrams. You may be a little lost if you don't view it, and it's not very long, so just take a peek at it, okay?